From our studios in Los Angeles and Tampa, this is Green Tagged Theme Park in 30. I'm Philip. I'm joined as always by Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. On Green Tagged, we break down the latest week's big news in theme parks and explain why it matters to business professionals. However, today we're recording this early. So if we're not talking about something that is really, really big news, that's why. It's because
we don't know it yet. We don't know it's happened yet. You're actually in our future. You are in our future right now.
We're time traveling.
Yeah. But but in all fairness, we are traveling, and that's why we decided to, instead of just leaving you out to hang because we know how much you rely on your regular schedule of Green Tagged to make certain that your week proceeds in a positive manner. This is one of those specials. So if it was the old days, you'd see that little special thing Chiron along the bottom of the screen that went dun 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 dun. Special.
Okay. Yeah, what Scott said. So we're going to be talking about stories that we didn't cover in previous weeks. And the first one is news that I broke about the new festival Fright Nights, which is coming to the Winchester Mystery House. So this is, I think it's an interesting story for several different reasons. But the basics here is that 13th Floor Entertainment Group has partnered with the Winchester Mystery House, and they are bringing a new Halloween event called Festival Fright Nights. And there are several elements that they have announced for this event already, although we don't have all the details. So the first thing is that it's going to be like an immersive story-driven experience. So it's going to take place in 1924 on Halloween night, 2 years after Sarah Winchester's death, and the plot centers around a theatrical masquerade ball hosted by the mysterious newcomer who claims to have opened a spiritual portal within the mansion. So as the evening unfolds, visitors will discover whether this daring ritual has revealed hidden truths or awakened something far darker. So there's that idea that it's the whole thing in its, I guess in that way, is like, it's kind of like a Sleep No More-esque type of thing where it's set in a time period where there are activities and things happening, but there are, separate from that, there's also haunted houses. So I assume the haunted houses are going to be also set in that time period because that's the whole idea. So there's 3 haunted houses. There's also going to be the theatrical performances that tie into the story. There's newly renovated areas in the mansion. And then, of course, there's themed food, beverage, and retail offerings. So this is very interesting, right? Because 13th Floor, we know they have a proven track record. And yes, of course, then the Winchester Mystery House, which is a historic, iconic property in the Bay Area. This is interesting to me because I love the idea of putting it kind of like story locked. It's very similar, I think, to what they did when they took over LA Hayride and they created the town of Midnight Falls there, 13th Floor did. And so it's similar where you arrive on Halloween night and, it's all the creatures, and there's this whole storyline where you can talk to creatures and they all have different stories and they tell you different elements about what's going on that night. So they've proven they can do this where they can create narratives and train characters to have narrative shells and whatnot. So I don't doubt any of that. It's interesting that they're going to put 3 attractions there because I've covered Winchester Mystery House for many years, and I've gone to several versions of Halloween, and it seems like they haven't quite figured out what Halloween is there for the Winchester Mystery House. And so, it used to be where it was just ghost tours, and then they did try a festival thing that was more family friendly, and they've tried some haunts. They've tried all sorts of different things throughout the years. But the thing, though, is that it's not it's a house, right? It's a mansion. It's not a theme park. And so them trying to fit 3 haunts in this, it's interesting to me. I don't know if it's maybe they're going to expand it on more of the grounds, or because it's not a big space. So that part's interesting to me. I love the story idea and them, tying all that together. I'm not sure how it's all going to fit there because it's a small space, but overall, I think it's good. When I broke the story, there was a lot of people that kind of like shared a lot of negatives. And I think if I'm going to characterize the negative or the pushback that I read about it, first of all, the pushback is like worry about damage to the historic property. And second is about 13th Floor basically just being like a corporate entity, basically, that kind of like the Chipotle of haunted houses, which was my favorite comment, where they kind of just like come in and do that. But I guess I would push back just in the examples I've already stated, in that they've proven they can do this before,
Mhm.
and I think they do good work, and that they've worked at historic properties before, and they haven't damaged them, and they haven't damaged the Queen Mary ship. I mean, so I don't know, whatever. I mean, even the local Winchester team, when they're doing haunted attractions, could damage their own property. So I kind of feel like that's its own thing. So
Well, I think it's exciting to see that somebody who knows how to do Halloween is coming in to do Halloween.
yes,
You mentioned that Winchester Mystery House has tried in the past to do Halloween, and they couldn't quite figure out what Halloween looks like
yep,
for them.
yep,
Well, then it sounds like they've made exactly the right choice
yep,
to bring in 13th Floor, who does know how to do Halloween.
yep,
And I love this. I love this story for so very many reasons. Number one, it is one of my favorite things to do, which is to bring Halloween, bring fear, bring terror to a historic landmark. I always
yep,
think that is so much fun, and it opens up so many doors for creativity. Having done things like the Vault of Souls in Tampa,
yep,
or the Undead in the Water on the American Victory ship.
yep,
These are the kinds of things that I just eat up. I love doing this kind of stuff. And so I think that's very exciting. There's also the fact that it is the 1920s,
yep,
which is an era that I think lends itself to a really interesting theatrical version of horror, because it's a time in history where things on the surface are so buttoned up and so it's during Prohibition, so they're so very conservative, but just below that veneer there is all kinds of crazy happening,
mhm,
and spiritualism and mentalism were incredibly popular at this time. People were having their cards read. People were going to mystics. People were going to seances. There's so much to play with, and that is not outside of the world of the 1920s that they're trying to create. Plus, you're going into a place that already has really cool, rich history, and it doesn't take a whole lot of fabrication to expand upon that existing history. This is what we tried to do with the Vault of Souls, is we took a few basic ideas and created history around it. And it was very funny, because when we started to do, because this was brand new for Tampa, they hadn't done anything like this really anywhere. And when we started to do media for it, I'd start to tell the backstory, and people say, "Is this true?" And my response, honestly, is parts of it, but I don't remember which parts. When you can integrate a story into such an existing rich tapestry, all you're really doing is replacing the threads that got a little threadbare,
yeah,
and
yeah.
maybe replacing them with something a little sparklier.
Well, I like too what you're talking about, and you've said this before about the idea of not fighting, or using your assets and not fighting the environment. And it's
Correct.
what you did with Vault of Souls as well. I mean, like when you went into Vault of Souls, you were in a different time period and everybody was dressed appropriately. And this is, Winchester Mystery House is like, I mean, effectively, they're like, we have this great asset that is already in the backdrop for this time period.
Mhm.
And so we just it's so much easier to just dress your actors in period appropriate garb and give them period appropriate characters than it is to also have to do that plus make a whole, fabricated mansion, right? You already have the mansion, and then you're not fighting the environment when you set it in this time period. All it takes is a little bit extra work from the storyline and the actor training, which I think is then it's going to create a more unique experience as well.
And it's interesting, because there are people who have been offered different spaces at different times, and they let their own, I'll call it creative ego, for lack of a better description. They let their own creative ego get in the way, and they'll say, "Great, I've got this super creepy haunted mansion. I'll finally get to do that sci-fi spaceship alien haunt that I've always wanted to do." Doesn't make any sense. It's just
Yeah.
the dumbest thing in the world.
Yeah.
So, let the space inspire you. I've even done that with like neutral spaces. If we can find warehouses, there was a project that I worked on for a short period of time in Canada that ended up unfortunately not happening. But one of the things that was so cool about it is I actually, after walking through all of the old warehouse spaces that it was going to take place in, I actually changed the theme of one of the haunts that we were going to put into a quote unquote neutral space simply because there were assets there that I couldn't have afforded to build. And I was like, well, why are we just putting a wall in front of this? Let's use this. This is an amazing tool, an amazing part of something we can build upon. So yeah, this whole concept excites me an awful lot. And the fact that 13th Floor is doing it, on the one hand, you can, if you want to be snarky, I don't know who in the haunt industry would ever want to be snarky. That never happens.
Oh,
but yeah, I don't know who'd want to be snarky about it. But if you did want to be snarky and you do say, yes, they're the Chipotle of haunted attractions, I would fight back on that really hard.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, they're a big company, and yes, they do a lot of haunts. But Chipotle, the difference is Chipotle, you go into every single restaurant and every single thing is the same. Yeah. I've not experienced that with 13th Floor.
I agree. Yeah, I think that this reminds me of the episode that we recorded at this point several weeks ago when you all are hearing it, but about Disney and the whole idea of it being like a corporate, you have, the individual layers of the individual employees, but then it also is part of a big political thing. That's part of it. And I think to me, it's like 13th Floor has to operate like a real company. Right. I think that might be some of the pushback is that I've been to a lot, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of independent haunted attractions. And I think not all of them operate the way that you would have to operate a company that is based in almost every state, and works with so many partners, right? You need a real HR department. You need a real tax department. you need to be able to track assets, and you need to run it like a real business, right? And I think a lot of haunts are not run by like a real business.
And the nice thing about a company like 13th Floor, they can pull ideas, concepts that have worked in all of their other locations that are appropriate for this location. They have their box of crayons isn't 16, it's 64. I mean, they have a lot to pull from. They have a lot of different experiences. They also have a lot of purchasing power, which is great. Yeah. So yeah, to me, this seems like a really smart move, really on both sides, because this also provides 13th Floor the opportunity to do something a bit more theatrical. And they keep adding uniqueness to their portfolio. And I think this is just another great step for them.
Yep. Yeah, and a good expansion into that market too, where it would have been hard to do. Again, the cost of a building in that market would have been hard. So this is a good way. So so keeping on the Halloween vibe, at this point, I'm sure there's a new announcement out, but a few weeks ago, we heard that the first two confirmed IPs for Halloween Horror Nights. So as of when we're recording it, they announced Jason at both parks, just Jason, the Jason from Friday the 13th. And then they announced Fallout and Five Nights at Freddy's. So they were not specific about Five Nights at Freddy's yet. They might have since we've recorded this, but basically they said that Five Nights at Freddy's would come out, would be involved in Halloween Horror Nights at both coasts in like a new way. Like they said, just a new way. During a panel presentation they gave at one of the horror conventions, during the panel, they seemed to refer to it as a haunted house, but they did not officially announce. So who knows what they mean by new, but it's going to be involved in a landmark way, kind of like a marquee way in the event. And then, of course, Fallout, based off of the series, not the game. So Fallout is going to be at both coasts. Now, a few things that are interesting about this. First of all, it's this thing where it's really becoming where they're just doing the same thing at both coasts, which is, we just talked about the concept of like a corporate, but I mean, it makes the most sense fiscally, right? To kind of attack it from both angles, to do, if you're already working with the IP holder, like Fallout, to just work it into both parks and to, reuse assets and reuse storylines and whatever, because the majority of people don't fly coast to coast to go to both events. So
just you, Philip,
just me and all the other Horror Nights vloggers. But to me, I think the most interesting thing is, I think Fallout is an excellent choice because it is so popular and because it's such a good story. Again, like we were talking about, drawing from that story. It's an excellent story. It's a popular game. So it has much more broader appeal. And then it was created into a series that has done really well. And then Five Nights at Freddy's, I think, is something we've been looking for I've been looking for years for them to do. And just because Five Nights at Freddy's is so popular, it's so it is. It's like we talked about with the anime thing, like the amount of of popularity that these two IPs has is immense. And I think that bodes very well for them trying to expand the Halloween Horror Nights brand and to bring in overall new customers into the theme park to encourage them to go to the damn event. And then the only other interesting bit is that they are bringing back the premium Scream Night in Orlando. And we talked about this last year, and Scott made the point that it's essentially them monetizing their dress rehearsal, which is basically what it is. I mean, premium Scream Night, I think, is $350 or it's somewhere around there. And you get to go to the event the night before it officially opens, and you get unlimited food. And the way it was last year, they're not sample sizes. Like, you just go up and you can just get any dish, the full dish, and however many you want from whatever. All the food's just included. And then they have what they call phased openings of the houses. So basically they're like opening a few at a time for certain windows, and you just go through. And I did that experience last year, and it was honestly an incredible experience. Like, it was my favorite Halloween Horror Nights experience because the lines, I mean, it was, you got to try everything and just go through the houses multiple times. And the crowds were so much more manageable than a regular night. So I thought it was great, but it's interesting they're bringing it back. So clearly something about it worked, or they just don't care, because if they get, it's $350, it's pretty good. And presumably they need to test the mazes anyway, and they need to test the food anyway. So you're just subsidizing their testing.
Yeah, it's there. This is something that is going to happen whether they allow guests in or not.
Yeah.
And from a creative director standpoint, I would embrace this with both arms and squeeze it until you couldn't breathe anymore, because this is, I think, brilliant. And part of the reason for the phased opening, I would guess, is so that the management team can go through all of the haunt experiences with quote unquote real guests. Yes, they are high-end guests who are going to spread the virus of this year's event out to the world. Excuse me, but I think it's important to recognize that this is something that they're stress testing. They're stress testing the experience, and the only way you can do that is with real guests.
Yep.
I said it when we reported on this last time, and you've probably heard me say it if you've ever listened to anything I've ever talked about when it comes to Halloween. The missing cast member is always the audience. And when you put the audience in there and you have the opportunity to experience it full out, not just a pretend audience, not just half the cast, who is just basically placeholders for the audience. When you can put real people in there, you can see how real people are going to respond, and you can make tweaks. You can make, you're not going to make radical changes, but you can make tweaks. You can reposition performers. You can change the timing on special effects. You can add more, less. You can add more fog. You can take fog away. There's a million and one things you can do, even in a one night turnover. You just change timing and everything, and it gives you a beta test that you can't really get any other way. And if you were to open it up and make it free, I mean, yes, you can do that, but why? Horror Nights has such a rabid fan base that they're willing to pay this. Obviously, it worked for them last year, and it would be really if I weren't usually working on the night that it happened, I would go as well. So it's cool.
I like your point about really you need to test with a real audience. I think that's a really and hardly no one does that. I mean, that's the other thing too. It's really rare because haunts generally have such few operating nights, and it's the whole thing. But you're right, even when you have friends and family there, it's not real because they're not they're not damaging the sets. I mean, real guests are crazy and they're unpredictable, and you need to be able to see that to change your show.
Yeah, and it's interesting because people who are listening are going to go, well, nobody would pay extra to come to our dress rehearsal night. No, we don't have the Halloween Horror Nights clout. and you probably don't. But I'm guessing if you put it out there, you might find that no, you're probably not going to get 350 a pop, but you might be able to do it. And even if you don't, one of the things that we used to do at Bush is because we had 6 or 7 haunts per season, we would bring in half the cast to play guests on the first dress rehearsal night, and the other half of the cast to play guests on the second half. But again, as Philip said, it's still not the same as real guests. Sometimes they're better, sometimes they're worse. Haunt actors love to give other haunt actors notes. So, it can create some, anybody who's done haunt just laughed because that's true.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it can be, we really had to manage it carefully when it was internally in the cast. But this, the premium, and basically all they've done from a production calendar standpoint is, in their opinion, now their opening night is their premium Scream night.
Yep.
And they just base the entire schedule around that. It's not considered, oh, we don't really open until next weekend. No.
Yep.
Boom. That's your opening date. Everything has to be drop dead done by there. And when I was at Bush, we didn't have quite the role that social media and guest voice played was not nearly as important. It's essential now. So get the people there who aren't necessarily going to come on press night because they weren't invited, but still want to go out and create organic content. Still want to go out and create organic content, which benefits you like crazy. Yeah. And you're not paying them to do it; they're paying you.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is feed them.
And I actually, if you remember last year, I thought that the food. Speaking of the food, I was surprised that you. So if we think back several years now, my geekiness is showing. But if you think back several years, they did the Taste of Terror or whatever, where it was that event that was just in the catering building. It was just like a food preview. Clearly, that wasn't enough, or that didn't work out. But the more I think about it, the more exactly what you said. I think this is a better version because when you give them the real dish, to your point. Now you have people that can talk about the dish and it's the real dish, and they can take pictures of what it actually looks like, and they can start the hype machine for the upsells, which is your food. And they can start, regular people can start recommending food. I think that's important. And then also it gives all the food people stress testing. Because if you remember last year, well, I'm sure Scott doesn't, but I do because I'm a crazy nerd. But last year there was a few dessert items that there was the Marshmallow Man that just went completely crazy, and and then there was the candy apple. There were some items last year that went super crazy, and some that didn't go well at all. And so I think those items kept running out in the first few weeks, and I'm sure what they were doing internally was moving people from making this item to making this item, and to kind of unbalance it. And it gives you all that data a day early, and that can make a big difference in a show like this.
Absolutely. And it also helps you with, ordering stock for the remainder of the event. The other thing it does is it can also stress test the employees' availability and timing to put this stuff together. Because usually when culinary folks put together a seasonal menu of some sort, whether it's for Halloween Horror Nights or, Christmas Town at Busch Gardens or whatever, they're not, the process of putting it together usually involves more steps. You have to, because they know they're not going to use it all the time, so they're not going to pre-make everything. So we have to put this on the plate, and then we have to add this to the plate, and then we have to drizzle it with this, and then we have to add the dry ice and give it to the guest. Yep. These kinds of stress tests allow them to test out, do we have enough staff to, if we've got a queue that's going out for, 10, 15 people, how long are they going to have to wait? And it's super smart. You've got the audience there who's willing to pay for it. There's absolutely no reason not to do it. It's a win-win-win scenario. And it's funny because I had forgotten about the Taste of Fear or whatever it was called.
Yep.
I'd forgotten about that. I would not be surprised if this is not strongly supported by the culinary team.
Yep.
to make sure that they have what they need to know. And doing the full portions is really important when it comes to training your staff and making sure you have enough staff
Well,
to handle what you
and
need
it's
to do.
full portions in the real kitchens in the real locations.
Right.
Which is also important because Taste of Fear was in the catering thing and it was samples. So that's a whole different monster to make catering samples and move them to a cater. Like this is like, can we actually stock the real kitchens and the real locations with the real portion sizes in real time?
What do we have to do to transport it if it's something that can't be cooked there? What does it stay warm? No, it's again,
it's brilliant.
So
it really is.
Simple, but it's so smart.
And I'm actually, this is one of the things where I'm really surprised that more attractions haven't tried something like this. Like I know people have a lot of criticism for Halloween Horror Nights, but I feel like every year we talk about something they're doing that is really smart, that is testing that other people don't do. And I think that this is something a lot of other attractions could incorporate, like you were saying earlier, in a different way, maybe a cheaper version, or tweak some things to make it work for your audience. But there's no reason that almost every attraction shouldn't be doing this. Like
you're going to do a dress rehearsal anyway.
Yes.
Just work it into your budget, that your dress rehearsal is something that is paid and guests can come out and experience it early.
Yep. And then the only other interesting note about this is that they're doing the Unmasking the Fear, or whatever they call it. They're doing the behind the scenes tours again this year, which is a good idea. Again, you have the assets. They're just sitting there during the day. If you can sell access to the mazes during the day for a tour, and then basically it's just like Scott always talks about. All you're doing is just paying it's only the cost of the tour guide, and one tour pays for that person's whole day. I mean, it makes sense because these are, $85 to $200+ walking tours per person. There's a group of 12 to 14, so it's $80 times 14. It's just for one staff member. That's it. So it's pretty good. And so this year they're starting the Unmasking the tours a week before they open. So starting on the 22nd, they're starting the tours. So you can actually go and tour the houses. They're only offering the 3-house tour, and you can go and tour them. And I think they did the same thing last year, but it's just interesting because we talked about last year where it's like there's probably tension going on there between, again, the people that want to make the money and the scenic team, because we all know that the houses, you are still finishing houses until the people start walking through them. And if you're taking time out of, basically then you're opening these up to be toured. And I get that's probably why only the 3-house tour is being offered early instead of the 6-house and the 3-house, because basically whatever they're touring, I mean, you're not going to be able to be finished. You're not going to be able, the scenic team has to be out of that area while you are taking guests through it to tour it. So they have to be done.
So let me ask though, are these lights on tours, or are these theatrically lit tours?
Lights on tours, yeah.
Then I would even go one step further. I would make certain that when the guests are walking through, there's an art direction team putting that last layer of fuss onto things, so that guests can actually, because let's face it, the people who are going to take these tours, they're going to nerd out about everything and the details and get your set decoration team in there. I mean, the real people who are doing it. And those of you who work in Haunt will know that the final art direction team, when they're doing stuff like this, they're covered in paint, they're covered in great stuff, and
that's funny.
And
so make it more of a show.
Make it so that you can actually really see behind the curtain. Because if you're doing a lights on tour anyway, you might as well show, here's the level we go to in order to meet the expectations of our guests. And I think it continues to provide value to the people who are really going to be interested in these kinds of things. Yes, they want, and I wouldn't have it in every room, and I wouldn't, walk them through big empty spaces, but if you've got a team in there that can still be doing final touches, last looks, I think that would actually elevate the experience as opposed to take away from it. Because again, this is truly a behind the scenes tour. And so again, smart. And it's something that, even though you may not be a Halloween Horror Nights, you may be an independent haunt, there's no reason you can't try it.
Yeah, you can
there's
still
no
try
reason
it.
you can't try it.
And I've seen so many smaller, just to finish off here, I've seen so many smaller attractions do versions of this. And again, it doesn't have to be to the scale of Halloween Horror Nights, but just take the principle and see if you can apply it. We like Fear Factory, they do in Netherworld. I mean, there's a lot of independent haunts that do. They do one day of behind the scenes,
Mhm.
and sometimes it's before the season ends, sometimes it's even after the season is over, and then they can share all the secrets and you can take pictures. I mean, yeah.
And I want to throw out one more. I want to throw out one more opportunity for the smaller organizations. One of the things we used to do at Bush is we did not do lights on behind the scenes tours. Usually, there was one time where there was a haunt convention in town, and we made one happen. But we did do a behind the scenes, no actor, theatrical lighting, audio at half tour for High School Journalism Day.
Oh,
What
that's
we
cool.
did was we invited, because they don't get invited, the high school journalists do not get invited to media day. They, don't necessarily get a media pass. But when you can get high school journalism people to come out, and we would break them into multiple groups. So while one group was touring just one of the houses, usually the new one, while one group was touring the house, another group was talking to our costume and makeup team, and another group was being put through an audition so that they could understand what it takes to become a haunt actor. And we got all kinds of really cool coverage in the high school market that way.
Oh,
So
that's fun. Yeah.
it gave us another leg up. But I could go on about that forever, and we don't have time because we're done. Guys, thank you so very much. Once again, just to remind you, this was recorded early, so if anything brand new has happened, please forgive us for not covering it because, well, we don't know about it yet. But we will see you next week right here on Green Tagged Theme Park in 30.